Parks and Rec meeting? No, that's over at City Hall. Yep, thank you. So we'll get started. I don't know where Barry is. He's not.
Yeah, no, they're just gonna.
Barry, or Rodney, do
a meeting.
you heard from Barry?
I have not.
Okay. All right. Okay, it is 6:30. We can call the meeting to order. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission. It is Monday, June 27th at 6:30. A couple of announcements. I would like to introduce our newest commissioner for Stango Park. As I'm sure you all know, Candace Fratella was appointed to council. So Bill Edelman is our new commissioner for Stango Park. He's a graduate of the University of Delaware with a degree in plant science. Actually, Rodney was a classmate of yours, he tells me.
Welcome, Bill.
Bill has a long history. He worked for Longwood Gardens, and while there, he did work for the DuPont Estates, which involved pruning. I've seen some of Bill's pruning since he's been on the committee, and he's jumped right in. So thank you. He managed the estate of P.S. DuPont III for 12 years. He's been maintaining formal gardens and open green spaces, reflecting pools, greenhouses. So he has a lot of experience. He had his own business, Rockland Designs, which he specialized in designing and building outdoor living spaces and revitalizing mismanaged landscapes. And he's retired here to Lewis, so we'll put him to good work on the Parks and Rec Commission. So
Glad to be here.
yeah, welcome. We're very, very happy and very fortunate to have you on the commission. I did, with the change in commission members, I did pass out an updated contact list for everybody. That was done last week. So I don't know. I don't think so. Jackie, I can send you. What?
For Bill's.
Yeah, Jackie, I'll send you a copy via email.
Okay, thanks.
City Hall will be closed Monday, July 4th. There are a lot of activities going on in the city for the 4th of July celebration. We are bringing the children's games back to 2nd Street. We had some volunteers step up for that, and they are still developing the program. The boat parade, we have the Doodah parade, and of course the fireworks on off of Lewis Beach. The Savannah Bridge will close at 7 p.m. to incoming traffic. And at the end of the event will be for pedestrians and bicyclists first, and then any cars after that. Freeman's Bridge will be closing at 8 p.m. Judy Jeffers is excused tonight. I just wanted to mention that the Public Art Committee is hosting an Art in the Parks opening, a formal opening on July 2nd from 4 to 6. We have 3 separate installations in 2 parks. So they will have docents at each site talking about the artwork and the artist, and just answering any questions about public art and whatnot. So I have some copies here if anybody's interested in taking one. It is also posted on the city website. I have no further announcements. Are there any from the table? No? Okay. Then we can go into item B1, which is approval of the minutes for the May 16th, 2022 meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review minutes?
I just have one comment that, on page 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph. I would like to add a sentence about something that I stated. And that would be, Ms. Thompson requested a realistic assessment of the number of children that the pond could accommodate without damaging the pond edge. Jackie, did you understand what I said?
Yes,
I just want to verify. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it.
okay,
That's all I have.
okay.
Any other comments or corrections? Okay,
I move we accept.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item C, the commissioners' reports. We'll do update on monthly activities, projects. So Harry and Ed had a busy month, so I'm going to start with you two today. Thank you, Ed.
We had a little blip on the horizon called Juneteenth that went off beautifully. Thanks to 1 million volunteers, thanks to neighbors, commissioners' husbands, Trina Hicks Brown, and a commission, the Afro-American Commission, the ROTC, the volunteers, the city, Rick from City Works, the police chief and his staff, the police, the fire police. The list just goes on forever. I feel like this is the Academy Awards, but it was fantastic. We were lucky. Janet represented the city on every commission meeting. Every Zoom meeting we had weekly Zooms, we had weekly walkarounds. And Ed and I started out being the hosts. We were just the hosts of the grounds, which grew. But it was, in my mind, I was so proud. I was just so amazed that everything worked so beautifully. It really did. And the farmer's market.
Mhm.
Helene and all the people from the farmer's market boosted together to provide us with equipment, with manpower, with facilities, with everything we needed, with guidance. It was great. Ed and I are tentations, which means we get to send the tents up and take them down. We had tentations there at 6 o'clock, helping our vendors. We had 50 vendors. Our vendors pack up. We had volunteers that opened the farmers market first thing in the morning. They were there helping the vendors pack up, and the vendors were like flabbergasted that somebody was there to help them. They helped put the tents up. They helped move their gear. It was rang like clockwork. It couldn't have been better. And Trina's really the queen of this operation. Outside of that, Ed and I have made contact with the bait and tackle guy. We have been trying to get some of the little blips in getting our park mode squared away. But outside of that, everything has been doing, beautifully.
And just reiterate everything Harry said. It was a true example of a collaborative effort across the board from everybody, and it made me, I'm very proud to be a part. That's it.
It was, I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to get there, but it was very well attended. The schedule was very well planned out. The parking was amazing, and I attribute that to Ed. But it really truly was a collaboration of the city, the commissions and committees and volunteers. It was really very well done. So
And very well attended.
yes, yep. So it was a really good inaugural, and it was the first, but it won't be the last, I'm certain. So
Set a high standard for next year.
yes, yes, maybe next year you can get that parade, Harry. I'll have plenty of time to keep my heart rate down.
And Marty wants an ice cream vendor.
Yes.
They canceled at the last minute.
Oh, there was one in the
Oh, yeah.
lineup.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. They were supposed to be right at the children's playground.
okay,
Didn't- No show.
I missed that.
We had scheduled for 10 vendors.
Right.
Five. We could have fit a sixth. That was it. They were big rigs. They came in big rigs. And we had no idea, when they say they have a 53-foot trailer, we didn't realize that they would have a 20-foot dually
Right.
pulling the 53-foot trailer and followed by another dually pulling the smoker. So we're learning. But and the park looked, it was full. It really looked, it was beautifully tented out, bandstand and sound system and the people was very well received. And the politest, most mannerly group. We had it in our hearts to pick up trash the whole time we were doing it. There was, and Chris will bear witness because she was picking some up. There
More than
was
a lot.
little or no trash to pick up. I mean, it was a very, very wonderful, wonderful experience all the way around. No faults.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for that report. Ray, do you want to talk about Swanndale Park?
Sure. So, as summer comes on to us, weather gets warmer, there's more work. So Lewis and Bloom has, every 2 weeks, we have a work day in the early morning to, just spruce up the park, weed it, make sure all the flowers look good. And I went by the park this morning and the park looked really fantastic. The fountain has been sealed. So that's step number one. Step number two is to get the pump cable fixed, and Envirotech is in charge of that. So we're just waiting for that cable to get fixed, the underwater cable, and we'll get the fountain up and running. Hopefully, we can get it up and running by the weekend. As soon as they put the cable in, we can get it up and running, fill it and start it up. And again, we want to be cognizant of the fact that American Bloom's going to be here on July 11th and 12th. So we want to make sure that the park is in really tip-top shape for that. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray. Rodney, you want to talk about Canalfront Park
Yeah, I
and the
don't have much
friends?
to report, just only to say that things are going well. They've already had 2 concerts. They were well attended. One of them had over 320 people, I believe, attend the concert. They're very pleased with that. And next week, the Friends are going to start their annual campaign to raise money, so you can expect a letter.
Well, they do wonderful things for the park and help us keep some items maintained in the park, the benches and whatnot. So their efforts are very much appreciated.
That's
Thank
all
you.
I have.
Okay, thank you. And Marty, the tree program?
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to report today. Been continuing with my routine inspections and tree tag maintenance and light pruning. I want to thank Bill this morning. He worked on pruning the crepe myrtles on 3rd Street, which were getting in the way of trucks and things. And I couldn't be there the whole time, but I helped him a little bit. But it was wonderful to see him in action, and we made a nice big pile for the city truck to come up.
Well, I want to thank Janet for driving the dump truck up there so we could throw everything in.
That's my least favorite part of pruning, is cleaning up.
Yeah, the city truck, yeah.
I did go to the Juneteenth celebration and it was wonderful. And one of my favorite things is that there were a lot of local organizations there that I hadn't necessarily heard of, and it was nice to know about them. And one organization had books, and I got some free books for my grandnephews, and that was great. And while we're talking about the Temptations, they've been helping the farmers market since the beginning. I want to nod towards Carolyn Jones, who, you invented them way back in the day, didn't you? And she was the leader for a long time until just a couple years ago, right?
It's been over 11 years.
It's-
It's been over 11 years. we've been-
Yep, and they're still going strong, as you know, so thank you, Carolyn, for inventing them. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Marty. Christine?
All right. Welcome, Bill, our newest member of the commission. We're so happy to have him here. We pretty much hit the ground running. So our first order of business was, of course, to meet with Janet. Talk about just some basic review of park policies and our current landscape contract and the commemorative bench program and the tree program, some things that, we have ongoing to just familiarize Bill with the commission. And as I said, Bill's already hit the ground running. So in addition to that, Bill and I also met with our Lewis and Bloom patrons, Liz Clements and Sue Carroll. Jackie, for the spelling of Liz, its last name is Clements, and Sue Carroll is Carroll. Our two new patrons with Lewis and Bloom, and they're doing a wonderful job planting out, among other things, the LA, which we've been working on quite diligently. And if anybody gets a chance to look at the from the front of the library on to the trailhead area, it's been completely planted out in annuals, and it looks amazing. Such a transformation from
I
last
agree,
year.
I think it's going to get better each year. I think as our biggest challenge is to keep the grass back, but that's just part of gardening. So I'm excited for that area because I just think you come out of the library, you look right down there now. It's such a neat site, and I think this year they kind of got a lot of the runts of the litter.
You did. That's right.
Yeah.
What
They
was left
cleaned out the
over.
warehouse.
So next year, I think planning wise, it'll even be nicer,
Yeah.
and it's just the beginning of something I think will really be spectacular down the road.
Mhm. It looks pretty good considering we were just sort of cobbled it together this year, but yeah, just the little, it's really made quite a difference. So
Has a lot of potential,
it
no
does.
question about it.
Yeah, so we'll be hopefully working with Lewis and Bloom with that, tulips next year, the whole thing. So we'll have some fun with it. But anyway, the only other thing I have to report is that the concert series has begun and off to a little bit of a bumpy start, the first two concerts. But we did in fact have our first outdoor concert last Tuesday night. And how many people do we have?
489 or something like that,
Yeah,
close to
Yeah.
500.
so.
It was
Very
a
well
very
attended.
good crowd. Yeah. The week before it was held indoors. We had rain earlier in the day and the park was wet and you have to cancel by Monday. So even though it was a beautiful night, it was still wet, but we had to cancel.
Mhm.
And then the first one, the Rehoboth concert band came and set up. There was no rain in the forecast. And as soon as they set up, it started to sprinkle and they have wind instruments, woodwinds.
Mhm.
So it was, they played one song and quickly got off.
Yeah.
the-
I think when
the
their
stage.
music sheet started to fly.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, it
had
was
to
a windy
stop.
day as well as a little drizzle. So,
But anyway.
and
think we're-
I would just like to say thank you for Chuck coming over
Oh,
this morning.
okay, yeah.
Carolyn was in the park Thursday afternoon and noticed that the concert banner came down and was flapping like a sail. So
Yeah.
she wrapped it around the post and I called maintenance, but Chuck got there before them. So thank you. It all worked out. That's true
You can
teamwork.
see from
Yep.
Behind us, the banner. is
Yeah.
back up again.
True cooperation.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I have to report. Bill might have a couple of things.
No, it's just one of my goals is to get the plant material under control. We have the flowers going great, and did a lot of pruning around the libraries. It's the side where all the employees park, but they really very appreciative of cleaning that area up. And it's just going to be, it's a perennial thing. It's every year. It's not just one shot deal, but it's not a problem. You know, we just address it.
Great. Yeah, everything looks great. Rodney, did you have something that you
Oh,
wanted to?
yes, I just want to say I had contacted Barry Duncan.
Yeah, he just,
Did
he's
he-
on.
Did he?
Yep, he's on.
Yes, and he said he contracted COVID, so he has to
Okay.
stay down.
All
Stay
right.
home.
Well, thank you for that. But you got on just in time because you're up next for your report, Barry. And I want to tell you that I did print off copies of the
Oh, good.
card opening. So if anybody was here and they wanted to take some, but I left most of the talking for you.
Okay, great. You want me to talk about art first or the meeting that we had for the park?
That's your preference. There are
Okay.
two big items.
All right, let me talk about the public meeting that we had for the Great Marsh Park. It was our first public meeting. Eric Wall put together a great presentation. We had lots of visuals throughout the room that were real nice for people to see and imagine what we could do out there. We did a presentation first, and then we heard from the audience their ideas, what they wanted to see out in the park. And then we had an exercise where we had everybody put dots on the things that they had mentioned. So Rodney and I were like scribes, and we put up, some of you were at the meeting, put up the things that people had mentioned that they'd like to see in the park. And then we sort of graded them by the dots. And I think Janet compiled the tally on all that. Anything else that we should note? I'm not thinking that well.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry that you're not feeling well. I think we got a great deal of positive feedback from the public on the way that the workshop ran. I think everybody had their voices heard, their comments, and I think the comments were all very consistent with passive recreation, nature trails, kind of keeping the park as much as possible, just a natural environment. So the data that was compiled, and thank you for the credit, Barry, but it was actually Melody, our local government fellow, that did it. But that has been sent to Eric Wall at Pannoni, and he's going to draft from that, a concept plan. We will have an informal meeting with him, and then we will do a second public workshop and let people comment on the concept plan, and then do some revisions to the concept plan, and hopefully have a final public workshop for folks. So
When do you anticipate that?
probably the next workshop would be the end of July, early August. And then after Pannoni does any revisions from the concept plan, we were probably looking at maybe early October for the final hearing. And then it would come to full Parks and Rec, and it would go to mayor and council.
It was very well received.
It was.
Quite a group.
Yeah, it was. We had a full house here, and then I left the comments open until June 10th, and I had a lot of emails that were received and were included in the final tally of the dot count.
Yeah, it's very-
So, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Barry. Do you want to talk about the public art?
Rodney, you were a big part of that meeting. Was there anything that you comment that you would make or would want to share with the group?
Rodney?
I didn't hear that, Barry.
I said, is there anything that you would want to share with the group? You were a big part of the meeting too, I think.
On the
More
Great
big-
Marsh Park,
Yes,
to add to it,
yes.
just say that I think I agree. We had a successful meeting. I was really impressed with the interest from the public and how people spoke up. And it also made an impression on me that there wasn't anybody who suggested we put active recreation out there,
Yeah.
which I didn't anticipate. So it was, as you say, it was a consistent point of view from the members. So that when you're in the design business, that always helps to have that kind of consistency.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you.
Great. As far as Public Art Committee, we have 3 sculptures in 3 different places, 2 of which are in Smith Park, Blockhouse Pond. The squirts are at the far end towards the school, and the other are near the Park Road end of the park. There's actually 4 separate little sculptures there, and those are the ones that have the historical African-American tiles on them, and they were, I guess, very appropriate for Juneteenth that just took place this past weekend. I was not able to attend that, but I'm sure that was a good addition to that event anyway. And then the last sculpture is in the same place that the Unbounded was, or some people called it the Pile of Rocks. Used the same space to locate that third one. And I don't know whether we reported at our last meeting that the sculpture, the Cape Spirit, that was sponsored by Art and Bloom, was, I guess, rejected for lack of information. It was, they wanted to place it in Canalfront Park between the gazebo and the arbor. There was question as to whether the spot could actually hold a sculpture because the water table is so low there. And you're talking about a heavy sculpture. So there needed to be engineering drawings and those kinds of things, which we didn't have. And there was a lot of other information that was missing that we felt on the application. And that's one of the reasons why it was turned down. They also indicated on their application that they would not consider any other place but that exact spot to locate the sculpture. So it was turned down. Everybody on our committee liked the sculpture. Everybody was excited about the sculpture, but just the process of locating it and where it was to go was really the issue. So that's all in terms of Public Art Committee.
Okay. Are there any questions for Barry? No. Okay. Thank you, Barry. If you need to cut out, I
Okay.
understand. Yeah.
Right.
I understand. Thank you. Kay, do you have an update on the the beaches for us?
I do. I'll keep it brief. And the main thing I want to speak about is the fact that we do indeed have a lifeguard group this summer, and we're off to a really great start. Strom Edwards is the captain of our beach patrol. He's extremely active, extremely confident. He has a great manner with dealing with the public, and I think everyone responds to that in a very positive way. Easygoing, but these are the rules, and these are the rules for a reason. He sent me a note this morning that so far they have had 19 rescues and 8 lost children who they're able to reunite with the parents, and 12 medical responses. So he's also got a lot of ideas and plans for sort of, I would say, next year, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. He plans on doing this for a long time. And because he's a swimming coach, he has young folks in the pipeline so that we could have a junior lifeguard program, which will really help with longevity, because as I'm sure you've seen, and it's even on the Weather Channel, it's been all over the newspapers, pools all around the country and cities have not been able to open because there are no lifeguards. So we are extremely fortunate to have this group under his leadership, especially when just so far, look at the difference he's made. That's 19 rescues that could have gone the other way. He told me that yesterday, a couple of young women were in an inflatable and the wind pushed them out pretty far. So he uses binoculars and they were crying. So he jumped in the water, and this group are very impressive swimmers and zipped right out there and got them. So he hadn't even set up yet. So proactive, calm, quiet, let's do it, and no drama.
Right.
So-
Calm, quiet, but very visible.
He's very. Yes,
Yeah.
he's very visible, very friendly, and firm but friendly.
Mhm.
And I think it's a great representation of the city to the public. And this last weekend was crowded,
Mhm.
but everyone was taking advantage of the whole beach, even though it was hot. It wasn't like everybody was all packed up. So people are continuing to distance, which is nice for everyone. So I can only envision great things coming. He's got some plans for this coming weekend for the 4th, so that he can have mobility to get between the 2 beaches and see how it's all going to go. And hopefully the fireworks will be visible from more places, so there'll be not as many as the first year, not as many people at the beach itself as there were the first year. And I think that will be terrific. So he and I, chat on the weekends, and I think when it comes time for planning next year, both from the Parks and Rec point of view and his point of view, I think we can work in concert and have a nice plan for making the beach terrific for all the visitors who were there. And he's got great ambitions that I think can only benefit everybody. So I'm extremely happy with how that's gone.
Good.
It's been a great service.
Yeah, he's really been a remarkable addition to the city staff, and has really stepped
We
up.
are lucky.
So he's looking forward to, as you said, coming back and
Continue
really
to improve and implement new ideas.
professionalizing the patrol. We're talking about, logos, the city logo, and, really just kind of branding the lifeguards.
Yes, and I think having other activities like even camps and things like that.
Lifeguard competitions we've
Mhm.
talked about.
Right,
Yeah.
and so, and I think now that he's been there long enough to kind of see what the issues are, that's also helped him kind of get, the range of problems or just, how to deal with folks.
Right.
And us, because we were discussing how people who come on Saturday are somehow more intense than people who come on Sunday. Most people on Saturday are kind of raw, and Sunday is just quieter. So anyway,
Yeah.
we're off to a really great start, and I'm really excited that he's here.
Great.
It's a great contribution.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. That's excellent.
Yes.
Warren, last but not least.
Oh, maybe I'm least. I don't know.
No, you've got lots to talk to us about with the competition coming.
Yes, first Mary Vessels in 1812, the Lewis and Bloom patrons have been working their little butts off, and everything looks very good. And we got off to a late start in 1812, but it is growing very nicely now. The Mary Vessels patrons are very tired of picking up magnolia leaves, but they'll soon be finished. So I tell them that they should get $1 from the city for each one they pick up, but somehow that Anne Marie didn't go for that. And on the judges, we planned out the schedule for when the judges are coming on July 11th and July 12th. Some of you here are going to be included in that. I'll be letting you know when you are scheduled in the next day or so. It has been a job to schedule everything. I don't know how we were able to take the communities and Bloom judges around in one day, because we have 2 days here and our schedule is just filled. I guess there's been so much more done in the city in the last 3 or 4 years. So I think I'm very optimistic about how we'll do. The one thing is, though, American Bloom isn't telling us who we're competing against. In the past, they've done that. And I don't know if they even know. Their judging now is different than it used to be. They have regional judges, so they judge towns in a region of different populations. And so then the scores, I guess, are sent all the way back to Ohio, where their headquarters are, and somehow they figure out who wins from there. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm very optimistic that we're going to do well. Everything looks great in the city.
Great.
Do you have a score sheet? You know how they score these, the gardens and the parks and so on?
I did have, I trained to be a judge, and that was in 2007, 2008, right around then when we had the recession, and they didn't need judges then because the number of entries dropped. So I never became a judge, but I got the training. I know how they score from that. They may have changed it a little bit, but basically, I have a pretty good idea of how they score. Yeah.
Okay.
But they look for things that like tidiness, and if there's debris on the streets or something, they don't like that. So it's important to be tidiness is one of the things that's very important, and community involvement. I think that's the most important thing that they judge on, and we are very strong on that. I mean, this town runs on volunteers.
So you keep picking up those magnolia leaves until July 12th, right?
And just to let you know, in Canalfront Park today, you wanted those honeysuckle out that were coming up the fence. My work crew did that this
very
morning, and
Thank you.
I was surprised that they were able to do it. The roots were so really thick on there, but we have some strong people. So.
Okay, any other questions for Warren? No? Okay, thank you. Ray, I just want to circle back to you if you have an update on the community garden.
Actually, the garden, we're very proud to say that we'll be part of the American Bloom competition. One of the questions I guess they asked is, do you have a community garden in your town? And so we'll be represented as the community garden, and we have, again, work days scheduled right up to it to make sure that the garden is in tip-top shape. But everything's going really well at the garden, and this afternoon's rain was really a blessing after such dry weather. So thanks for asking. Yep.
Great. Okay, thank you. Well, I think that covers all of the commissioners' reports. So we can move to old business. Item D1 is discussion and possible action on the draft recreational activities policy. You will recall, it was in January that I put this forward, taking a look at, as time allows, the policies and the permit approvals that are issued from the Park and Marina Administration Office. And this was one of the first ones that we did. And it was, we started it in February. We did a revised draft on March 16th, and that came back to the March Parks and Rec Commission, at which time there was a recommendation to accept the policy and move it forward to mayor and council, which was done in April. And they had some comments that they wanted the Parks and Rec Commission to revisit, which is why it's back on the agenda for tonight. It will not obviously impact the permits that are issued this year. But they wanted to, council had noted that the policy stands silent on what happens between October and December. We identified May through September as the time that recreational activities are permitted in the certain parks and the beaches. And the policy states that applications are accepted from January through March, but we stand silent on a couple of months. So they wanted us to address that one way or the other, whether we're not accepting permits during that time or lengthening the season, whatever the commission sees as appropriate. One of their other comments was on page 2, item 11. Permit holders will not advertise with use of banners, flags, yard signs, etc. in the parks and beaches. And their comment to that is then, how do people know where in the park or where on the beaches the group that they're looking for is setting up? So they asked that that be considered again, reconsidered, evaluated. George H.P. Smith Park not permitting activities on Saturdays and Sundays. The Saturday issue was the farmer's market, but there wasn't anything to address Sunday. So they asked that we revisit that. On page 3, the meters have changed to 8 o'clock. So that was just a correction that wasn't made when the subcommittee was looking at the policy. And the final observation and request to revisit was the fee schedule. And Carolyn, if you can have any comments, but the council felt that it was a steep curve for the fees and asked that the commission reconsider the fee structure. So that's the basis of this agenda item. I have a suggestion, but would like to open it up for comment before we take action.
Here's an easy one. City beaches, it is 9 a.m. That is correct. What we have is the meters don't start until 9.
Correct. What I was referencing was the end of the meters. They were off at 6 p.m.
Right.
They are now off at 8
8,
p.m.
okay,
So
alright.
that's an easy
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
I don't think that requires any discussion.
Just gonna nitpick, but I would note that for George H.P. Smith Park, it refers to the Ocean Lifelong Learning. That's no longer there, is it?
No, it's not.
That should be-
Okay. Are there any comments on item 11? The use of banners, flags, yard signs, et cetera, as a locator for visitors. I think the reason why that went in there was to limit the, again, balancing commercialization of the parks and beaches versus, you know, advertising the businesses. The council was looking at it as a service to people who are looking for this activity in the parks. Harry?
I think the banners should reflect service to the people looking for activities. A big sign that says yoga, a big sign that says boot camp.
When you say big sign,
you know,
do you think that that should be size limited?
I'll throw that open to everyone's discussion, but my point would be, I'd like those signs to go up maybe an hour before they begin and come down promptly.
They'd be
when they end.
temporary.
Yes.
Yep.
I think that's the most important thing, is that they're temporary.
Well, and I think they should be generic. I don't think they should say somebody's yoga or somebody's boot camp, because then we're getting into advertising.
Okay.
Reference the activity rather than the vendor.
Then the vendor. Okay.
Yeah, if you come in on Savannah Road, you can see where the Saturday morning yoga is. If you came into Savannah Beach on Virginia Avenue, you might not see it.
Okay.
So I can see where you're like, oh, where did I miss it? And it's all the way down there. So I can see that you might need a flag or something to say, we're the group down here, or keep on driving. But as long as it's temporary, I think that's the main thing, is that people.
Right.
don't think
That
they
they're not
need-
there all summer.
Right, because you don't want a proliferation of signs like there are, open house signs and, the neighborhood signs that go out in the county, every weekend. You don't want that. But, to say we're over here is useful.
Right. Okay. Any other comments on that item?
Do you think they want a size limit on these things?
I would do a,
Barry, go ahead.
I would do a size limit, and those real estate signs that you push in the ground with the, small, I don't know what size they are, like, I don't know, 18 by 24.
Well, and I think, like yard signs, I reference, we use those for the concerts at Canalfront Park.
Yeah,
to
like
represent our sponsors for the concerts. And I think that would be, reasonable.
That's farmer's market.
Right.
If you're looking across the beach, I would think they might want something that's
Yeah.
to be able to see, because those signs are pretty low.
Those, yeah, is that what they're called? The feather signs, the big ones? I would think if they just say yoga.
Like the flags, those,
Yeah.
Yeah, you see.
Because
Outside.
if you're searching for them, it's one thing when you have your sign about the concerts right by the road.
mhm,
They can be road driver visible. But if you're walking down the beach and you're looking through the dunes and you look, it would be nice to have something. And
I would check the sign ordinance, though. I think feather flags are illegal in the city.
yeah, I don't know that those are permitted, but it's something that
It's
we
something
can
like that.
look into. But they should be, should they all be uniform? So should they all be the real estate yard sale signs, or should they all be the flower or flag signs? What's the feeling on that?
I think a flag's hard to see. If the wind's not blowing, you're not going to see the flag. So that doesn't work. There's no wind, and you can't see the flag. You can't see what it says.
Well, the feather signs have a hoop that stretches them out.
Yeah.
Oh,
You,
okay.
you can read those, Barry,
Oh.
whether it's wind,
Oh,
whether
okay.
it's breeze or not.
I see.
Except they're illegal in the city,
Pardon me?
except those are illegal in the city.
They're illegal in the city? Well, they're right, aren't they right down the,
Well, they're the
Savannah
sign
Road?
ordinance is complaint driven.
what's that?
The sign ordinance is complaint driven. So
Well-
if somebody doesn't, if it's against, say there's a real estate signs also, like actual real estate signs are only supposed to be up for a particular number of weeks.
Right.
If a real estate sign has been there for 6 weeks, you can call the building official and they'll go and remove it. That's how the
Okay, but
sign
that's a
ordinance
different
works.
issue than what the sign is, in my view. I mean, if it's a feather sign that is put up an hour before the event and taken down an hour after the event, that's not much of an intrusion. And if it looks like a real estate sign, contractors put up signs all the time in front of houses and everything else that are like real estate signs. So, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea, in my view. I mean, I could be wrong, convinced differently, but to go ahead and have a feather sign, you plant it out there when you're teaching your yoga class and you take it down.
I would still check the ordinance, because if it says no,
Oh, yeah,
it's
okay.
no. I'm just saying.
I checked
we
the
can't-
ordinance as well.
Right, because there was a huge objection to them when we wrote the sign ordinance.
Okay.
But clearly, I mean, I think it should be whatever, it's situational. If people can see where you are, you might not need much. If you're sort of in an obscure corner and people might be far away and you're trying to get their attention, you might need something high up. The main thing to me is that it's temporary.
Well, there's also the possibility of the policy designating specific locations within the parks where activities, recreational activities are permitted. And then signage could be possibly kept to a minimum.
I don't know, I'm ready to say that. I mean, there's an infinite number of possibilities of what people might ask for in the future. I don't know that we can actually predict where they might be.
Does the city have a sign ordinance that's specific about this kind of thing?
Oh, yes.
Well, why don't we just say it has to conform with city sign ordinance and city rules, that's all.
Not before, what happened before the event, and take it down.
And it conforms with, I mean, I don't think anybody's asking us to rewrite a sign
No,
thing.
no.
So. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I think those feather signs come in different heights also.
sure.
Well, we'd have to look at the ordinance and see what it says, because it might not be dependent on height. It might just be the signs
definition.
itself. Right, right. So we can take a look at that.
Going down to bottom of page 2, the George H.P. Smith issue. Why can't we just kind of use the phrase that's at the beginning of the Canalfront Park? Activities may not conflict with other activities approved in the park, including police night out, Juneteenth, historically, police farmers market. And that park is a pretty big park. I think you could actually have an activity someplace else in the park while the farmers market is going on, as long as they don't use the same geographical area. I don't know if anybody would want to, but you certainly could. There's room. So if you have a sentence like that, that just says conflict with these other things.
The only conflict we experienced with Juneteenth and farmers market with only an hour lag between the two was parking.
Right.
So it's, the farmers market absorbs every inch of parking.
Right.
And Juneteenth was the attendance, I mean, the parking lot was full at times. It was full to the point where Ed was thinking of opening up more roads.
So for me, that's a question of what's a conflict? If somebody wanted to set up yoga with, 10 people on the other side of the park, or the farmers market, that probably would not be a problem. If they want to have a big event, well, that's a problem.
Well, event is a totally different thing than a recreational permit. That's an event permit and it goes through a whole
Or if
different
they want to have
process.
a bigger class.
I'm all for opening our park up 7 days a week. More activity every day makes me happy. So, any way we can get there, I'm all for it.
When they have this yoga, for instance, it's at the same spot each time.
Yeah, the one in George Smith Park is, well, there's two different groups in there on different days, but one is kind of over by the playground area. And they're basically in the same place all the time. And I think that the other group is kind of where a lot of the Juneteenth things were activities were taking place. And the reason why they're there is because there's shade. There's also parking. A yoga mat isn't heavy to lug around to the other side of the park, but it's convenient. So that's.
But these people have a business, so they're marketing their business, and a few signs should be able to direct them without
Mhm.
flashing lights and
Right.
so.
Right. Okay.
So are both those items being deleted then?
Well, what I would propose is that we had a subcommittee meet, and I'm not asking for a subcommittee, but I would like the group to reconvene as a work group just to hash out some of these things that we're talking about here. So, I mean, specifically opening up George Smith Park for activities every day. Looking at the ordinance and getting the details of the ordinance and how we can work that into item 11 for signs. And then to look at the fee schedule, keeping in mind that, council was sensitive to the fact that this seemed like a higher increase than was reasonable. So,
That's something that we also noted, somebody noted in Rec and Parks, where we had a lot of issues with the fees. So it sounds like it's definitely something we should revisit.
Or perhaps we can look at an incremental increase over maybe the next 5 years. So it's not a 400% increase in
Of
1 year,
one
but
and
maybe
done.
down
Right.
the road.
that's
Get there.
certainly an option. So,
And I think Ed and I can just write up something for George Smith Park. Marty can help us with that since all three of us are involved with that park. I don't think it needs to go to a subcommittee.
no, I think a work group, and I think what I would propose is that the commissioners that were involved with the subcommittee reconvene as a work group to hash some of this out. It was Harry, Rodney, Kay, and Candace, the commissioners for the parks where these activities are permitted. So Bill, that would be you. And, I don't think it's a huge lift. The subcommittee did a lot of work. I think as a work group, it doesn't have to be posted as a public meeting. It's just, we're just revisiting this as a work group. Harry?
We can do it in one meeting.
I'm sure. So is there a motion to move this to the work group for?
I want to make that motion.
Oh,
I
thank you.
think that all these decisions should be solved by the work group in one meeting, the addendums and the changes. I hope, no, I know it's going to happen.
You know that.
I think the biggest discussion would be the fees.
I think Ed's idea is great. We have a 5 or a 10-year fee schedule plan.
Okay,
And if you give it to them long enough in advance, it will be more easily palatable.
Okay, so who would like to chair this work group and pull the meeting together and work on,
Oh, I would.
Harry will?
Yeah, I'm on a roll here.
You are. You're just coming off the Juneteenth success and you're gonna take this and run with it.
Plus more caffeine tonight.
Okay.
When will this meeting be?
It's gonna be in the morning, Kate, so you can come before work instead of, no, I'm kidding. You
I work
can't-
at 7.
Right, you can't get there until after work. We understand that.
Okay.
So it'll be at your house,
I'm misspelling. Oh.
cookies,
My house is very small, but you'd all be welcome.
just kidding. We'll meet here. It's only gonna be one meeting. Rodney's gonna make sure it's only one meeting.
I'll do my best.
So is this
Now,
gonna be a
is
July
this
thing?
something that has to be?
I'm going to leave that up to the person who's doing chairing the work group. What?
That's fine.
Oh, okay. So Harry, thank you
Mhm.
for chairing. I can send you the notes of what we talked about and what the points are that were raised by the mayor and council.
Great.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
I'd like,
Don't
Yeah.
forget the gap calendar months.
Right,
That
no,
was
I-
addressed, that
yeah.
was addressed by council. so
Yep.
What was it?
The gap of the calendar
Oh,
months.
The months where the policy
I
stands
mean, maybe you
silent,
waive the permits or whatever.
right?
Because I was at the council meeting and my feeling was that they want to encourage activity, not discourage activity. And whether we waive permits and still encourage activity is something we would probably want to look at.
Mhm.
Because that's what they're looking at.
Or
They want
or-
year-round activity
Or lengthen the season.
or lengthen season, which would make more administrative work for you. However, I don't think you're going to be dealing with that many.
I don't
If-
think that there will be a lot of requests for yoga in the park in December. I could be wrong, but all that needs to be done is just to address it one way or the other. So we're not standing silent on it.
I'd like to make one comment. One of the things
Warren,
that,
you were so quiet.
yes, one of the things the American Bloom judges do is make recommendations to the town.
Okay,
And in 2010, they made a recommendation that our parks were underutilized. Lewis and Bloom sent this to mayor and council. And after that, the parks opened up where we were able to put gardens in the park and many more activities. And what a difference since 2010. One other recommendation was in 2015 that they hire a parks administrator.
oh, well, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Yes, I did notice that since my time here that there was different titles for people who worked in what is now Park and Marina Department. So thank you. Those were two good recommendations by the committee and the city responded.
Yes, they make some very good recommendations.
Well, I'll be interested to hear what they say.
I will too.
All right, Ed, thank
Janet?
you. Yes,
It's Jackie. I
Yes.
didn't hear the motion. You had said you wanted a motion about the committee, but I didn't.
so we can circle back. Harry had made a motion. Harry, what was the motion?
That we have a work group that will meet once and correct or address,
these issues.
that will address these issues.
And
Thank you.
report back to-
And we'll
Report back here,
to
Parks and Rec
Parks and
Commission.
Rec.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second for that motion? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie keeps me on task. All right. Okay, so that takes care of old business. which brings us to new business. Item E1 is discussion and possible action on selection of a chairperson for the Parks and Rec Commission. I had a lot of texts and conversations and questions about this item, so let me give you a little background. This came up, I know we talked about it 2 years ago briefly when I first came on board as the Park and Marina Administrator. And it was discussed and the commission felt that they would like to carry on with the structure as is, with the city staff being the chairperson. I know many of you were at the meeting here in the Rollins Center where we had the orientation for committee members and commission members. And for those who couldn't be here in person, I hope you were able to either listen to it live or go back and listen to the video. But Anne Marie at the end of the evening had just some tips and observations for how to run a successful meeting, writing agendas, the role of committee members, the role of the chairperson, the role of the city staff liaison to the commission. So that just got me thinking again. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to look at Chapter 40, which is the Parks and Rec Commission. I have never been officially appointed. I kind of slid in. It kind of came with the position. But Chapter 40 does state that mayor shall appoint and city council shall confirm a chairperson for the commission. The term of office is 3 years. Our commission terms are on an annual, or they're 3-year terms, but the terms are September to September. So with September coming up, I wanted to put this on the table for discussion. And if there was somebody that was interested in the chair position, or if the commission feels that they want to remain status quo, then I think that there should be an appointment from mayor and council, because that's what Chapter 40 indicates. So
what you're saying is that this committee decides on who that person should be, and then that is submitted to the mayor and city council? Is that what you're saying?
it can go that way. They can make a recommendation. What I'm trying to
Can't the mayor
do.
and city council just make, as we do every commission? that we-
You can do that, but I want to put it forward to the commission to see if there is anybody interested, so that that can go to the mayor for consideration. This is the only commission or committee that has a staff person as the chair.
When we think about how this
so-
Committee came about. It makes sense.
Pardon?
When you think about how this whole Park and Rec Commission came about, I mean, it's totally different from everything else we have.
Right.
Well,
So,
And I think for many years,
It was all.
it was someone who was on the commission, and then there was a point where no one had the time
Exactly.
to do it, and that's when I
That's
think
how it
that
came about.
Allison,
Became assigned.
yes.
Yeah.
Was hired. And Bailey Lester was chair for a number of years.
And then Carol Richardson.
Yeah, well, they hired Carol
and
to
then
do.
Allison.
In the meantime, between Bailey and Carol, members of council took
Correct.
turns and chaired the committee.
Correct.
And when they weren't there, one of the members of the committee on rare occasions chaired it.
So at some point they made a decision to just decide on picking a person from staff. Is that are over.
Or the, well, I think Carol was hired for the position.
Well, and I think part of it too
Yeah.
is the budgetary needs of this commission are huge. Yes. And I think, I think that is a big part of the job is understanding the budget process and being able to participate in it. I can see why that would be difficult. Most definitely. Thanks, Kate.
I also see your role is very important because you're our chain of command. I can't just call somebody in the city and tell them what I need for George Smith Park. I can't just call.
But
city-
my being chair doesn't impact that. I would be the city liaison to the commission. So I'm the city liaison for public art and for the bike ped committee. And I go to all of those meetings, and if there are budgetary issues, if they want to order something, I just ordered bike maps for them and it comes out of their budget. I would still do the Parks and Rec budget as the staff person. I don't see that process changing. And if there is a change in the chairperson, I would work with the chairperson on, technically, the chairperson sets the agenda. But the other two committees, well, one of the two writes their agenda, but then brings it to me for, well, they both do. They both bring it to me for comment, for, revision, for fine tuning. I ask questions, what is this about? So the chairperson comes to me when they're doing the agenda, and that wouldn't change here. I would work with whoever it is if there's a change. So.
Have a chairman. I think you also need to have a vice chairman and a secretary, because if people are away, if someone's sick, can't be there.
Right.
You have to have others who are ready to step in.
And this commission is large enough that there should be somebody that could step into those positions. So I
Probably
think
need to
that,
define that role, excuse me.
go ahead.
We have to kind of define what that role would be, of the chairperson, because
In their
it's
bylaws.
more than just running the meeting.
There are bylaws that need to be revised.
Do we have any, do we still, do they actually exist?
They're not, I don't know if I have
I've
a
never seen
copy.
them.
I don't
didn't
have
know
a
we had
copy.
bylaws.
I don't know that they're exactly called bylaws. This came up too when we were putting together the committee and commission orientation, is that they asked for copies of the bylaws, and I said, we don't have bylaws, but we do have something. And I'll have to go back and look at it, because a year ago I started to revise it, and then I had to put out some other fire and it got put on the back table. So I can certainly send that out to everybody. But I think it's an opportunity. I mean, this is a big commission. It's an important commission. To Warren's point, there are recommendations made by the America in Bloom and other competitions. And I think they're good recommendations. I think the commission does excellent work. And I think that there are, still a lot of things that we need to look at as far as policy and procedure. So I'm trying to go through things one by one. So this is number 2.
Do you feel that you're overburdened with all you have to do as the head of this?
I don't,
committee?
it's not a burden at all. I think it's a challenge for me to be a chair and not have a voting right as other chairs do, where ex officio is a true ex officio. So I'm a chair ex officio. And that's a difficult position, but as far as the workload, it's not burdensome for me. That's not the reason why I'm bringing this up tonight. It's to be in line with what code says and, you know, have that discussion.
Would it be, if you had a vice chairman and a secretary, would that help you? Because you could delegate some of the structural things, and yet when it comes to budget time, you're still clued into what everybody's been doing all year long. Because I would think that would be the most helpful thing, if you've got to prepare and present the budget. You're being in on it all year long. It's not like, okay, where are we? You know, right before the budget, because it's cumulative.
Right.
It's complicated.
I would still be at every meeting. I would still be processing vouchers like I do as the park and marina manager. So I would have a handle on the budgets and know what's going on. And, you know, are you over budget, under budget? You know, what do we need? If you're over budget, you know, what do we need to do? Or if you have a large unexpected item that comes up, which happens all the time, you know, so where do we pull from to manage that? So, I mean, none of that will change.
To
Any
me, it's a
comments?
question of, are we trying to come into compliance with something, or are we trying to fix a problem? I'm not aware of any problem. It's a compliance issue.
Yeah, it's just compliance. And
I think if we want, let's say we wanted as a group, we like the way it is, then we could ask the manager to put in his chair.
it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
I
do too.
Harry?
I don't want to be obtuse, but I don't think we need any of this. I think it's a great idea from down above, looking down and saying we need more layers of bureaucracy. We need more people involved, and we need a secretary, we need an assistant, we need a chair. I don't see the need for any of that. I haven't seen a meeting that has come to a halt.
Well, I think the purpose of that is, as Warren had mentioned, that if I came down with COVID and we had a meeting, or I got pneumonia, or I, you know, broke my leg and had to have surgery, whatever.
Or took a
that-
day off.
Or really? It could, that there is somebody that knows the structure that can, you know, run a meeting in the chairperson's absence.
Could we come to your house?
No, well, only if you're bringing flowers, because I'm sick.
Sorry, just being negative. I don't see any benefit to having all these.
I don't think it's not extra layers. It's a support for the chairperson in their absence, basically. Yeah, vice chair. Yeah, it's not another layer. And the appointment is just being compliant with code, whether it's me or somebody else. I don't know how Allison got appointed, if it was written into the job description, I don't know. But the code clearly says that the commissioner is, or the co-chair is appointed by mayor and council. So I'm a rule follower. I admit that. But I just think this is an important body of decision makers. The parks are, highly utilized. We're starting to look at policies and procedures within the Parks and Marina Department. So I just think it formalizes, all pieces of the process.
And those jobs are really meant to be held. I mean,
Right.
because I mean, I did it for decades with planning commission, and you were given an assignment as an officer, and you were to be in charge of legal aspects, financial aspects, and everything else of subcommittees to get things done, and
Right.
you had to get it done.
Right.
So it's meant to be manpower, division of manpower.
Right. So
And-
if there were a subcommittee of this commission, a vice chair could run those meetings so that I can do the administrative work in my office, sign all those invoices for you.
So is this something that'll come on the agenda of the MCC in September?
What I think, if there's not a decision tonight on what the commission wants to do, I would come back and revisit it in July and or August. So we can table the discussion for tonight so that people can think about it. People can think about if they want to step into a role of a vice chair or a secretary. We can come back and discuss it. And then I would like to have it on mayor and council for September. And whatever the outcome is, and really it's, the time is not a burden for me because I'm going to be working on the agenda with, if it's not me as the chair, I would be working with the chair. I would still be here at all the meetings. So that's, that's a non-issue.
I think really what Janet needs is just a little bit of breathing room. For the short time I've been here, any function that's going on, I go to vote, there's Janet. Ted Baker's getting this thing, there's Janet. I mean, she's everywhere. I mean, it's whatever they throw at her, she catches. And I think she just wants to catch her breath every once in a while.
Thank you, Bill.
I can see.
Can you we're talking to the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
I can see having a vice chair, and I think in the event that you're not around, the vice chair could run a meeting, that would be fine. I don't know that we need a vice chair to chair any committees. I mean, we have no trouble when we create a committee, we put somebody in charge who is close to the subject matter. and that's-
Well, the two subcommittees that we've had, I've chaired them.
Oh, you chaired them?
Yeah, the pickleball subcommittee and the recreational activities subcommittee, I chaired them both. So, so that, I mean, that would, a vice chair would definitely be helpful.
Does, for something like that, would you still have to be there as the city liaison if somebody else chaired?
I think for the subcommittees, it wouldn't be necessary because there would be somebody in a subcommittee. So when we did the pickleball subcommittee, I did the minutes and chaired the meeting. So what I would recommend for any subcommittees moving forward is that there is if there's a vice chair, that they run the subcommittee meetings and that there would be a secretary to do those meeting minutes. Because that was time consuming.
Is it a requirement that a subcommittee have a vice, either the chair or the vice chair running it? Or could it
Yeah.
Be any member.
I suppose it could be any member. I just think that because the subcommittees are public hearings, and they have to be posted just like these meetings do, that it's somebody who understands, Robert's Rules of Order and the posting requirements and whatnot. And that a secretary in that capacity for the minutes so that they are accurately, that there's somebody standard to do that for this commission's subcommittees. Pardon?
Because of the public, we need that.
Right, right.
I mean, with the mayor, city council, we break into ad hoc committees, which is always 2 council members.
Right. Any other discussion?
So we'll think about it for the month, but you would appreciate some manpower.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to lay out a kind of a path forward. And I actually wasn't even thinking of subcommittees and the work that's involved in that when I started thinking about this. So this discussion actually led me to, yeah, that would be helpful.
And maybe a budget time too, to sort of
Yeah.
help compile.
Yeah.
Process.
So if I understand this, if you do have a chairperson, that every time you had a subcommittee, that chairperson would be in charge of running that subcommittee?
That is the way it's worked since I've been the chairperson. I just took over. But if there's now discussion of the structure of having a vice chair, that is something that the vice chair could do, is to take over for chairing those subcommittees. I mean, I don't see, I mean, moving forward, there could be subcommittees like to look at policies again, to look at the bylaws. I don't think it's something that is going to be overwhelming, time consuming. I don't think it's something that, is going to be a regular event to have subcommittees.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the job description is. If it's a matter of,
Other duties as assigned.
pardon me?
Mhm. It's called other duties as assigned.
It's the last line of my job description.
Yeah, well, that's perfect.
Which is a big
But
one.
I'm just trying to also think back, when we had the pickleball committee, I was on that with Barry
Mhm.
because we both had experience designing parks and those kinds of things, but it couldn't have been, it could have been, I fully expected to take notes and distributed them, but you said, no, I'll do that.
Mhm.
I could have done it. I would have been willing to do it for that
For that committee.
committee. So, I guess my question is this something that we're kind of going down the right road? We just need to maybe, when we meet with Harry to talk about, this parks and permitting policy,
Mhm.
maybe Harry would be responsible for preparing the map or asking, a member of the committee to prepare the memo that gets submitted to us in the meeting. So we're not really creating more government and
Mm-mm.
more layers. We're just trying to make it clear that we can assign responsibilities and take it all off of you.
Mhm.
Well, to understand what the process is.
Right.
Why, like I did the minutes for those meetings.
Right,
So I-
right.
Just
That's right.
bang those
Right.
together, because I've also done those for 1,000 years. But I think it's nice experience to learn, okay, this is why you do it, this is how you do an agenda item, this is what it looks like, this is how you post it, this is how you do minutes. I
Right.
mean, it's interesting, and it's good information to know.
Mhm.
So it does sort of, it's good training,
Right.
especially if it helps
Right,
distribute the work a little more evenly.
right.
I'm not volunteering to do the minutes for this next time, though. Just saying.
You ready to revise mine?
Yeah, yeah. I already did it twice.
If we do have another subcommittee, we can
Right.
have someone volunteer to do that.
Well, one thing, might be, do we need bylaws? I would imagine Glenn would say, we do. And that could be something that a subcommittee could work on,
Mhm.
look at the other bylaws and see, since this commission is really different from all the rest, what's suitable
Mhm.
for this commission.
So what I can do is, dig up that document and send it to everyone for consideration. And we can table this discussion for July, get you that document. How does that document tie in with chapter 40 and tie in with the discussion that we've had tonight? That will give you all time to digest and, you know, think about the discussion and how to move forward. But one way or the other, Carolyn, I would like some form to go to mayor and council to kind of tie this together and make it consistent with, you know, other
Sure.
committees and appointments.
I had a previous conversation with the mayor before I came in regards to this. Because I hadn't seen this, so I wondered, I said, this couldn't have been the council I'm on because I didn't see this before, but Andrew said the same thing with me. So this is an education for the both of us, so I'm very curious to see where we go from here. We have to educate ourselves on this as well.
Right, right. So, and I'd be happy to talk with the mayor
It's good.
and, you know, let him know at his convenience. I'd be happy to talk to him and,
Yeah, I think we'll do that.
okay. All right, thank you. So we will table discussion. I will send those. I'm just going to call it the document because I don't know what it's called.
Actually, I did search for them and I didn't really find them. So-
Now, it's hard to find.
It's pre-internet presence by the city. I mean, I think when it was active, there was very little internet presence and the city hadn't posted most of its stuff on the internet. So I didn't even know it existed.
All right. Well, thank you all for the discussion. I think it was kind of educational to all of us. So we are tabling that till July. Okay. Well, I think about when I started in this position in September of 2020 and had some floundering and some learning curves, and I think I feel like I've come, you know, a long way. And part of that is because of the help that all of you gave me. So I appreciate that. So on to our last item, new business E2 is discussion and possible action on the lawn and landscaping maintenance contract specifications. I hope I attached this to the agenda. You can see that this is dated. These are typically 3-year contracts. The current contract expired in 2021. And the contract had a clause that the city may choose to extend the contract for up to 2 years. So when I came on in September of 2020, this is something that we would have started to address in the fall with that contract is expiring in March of the following year, because it does have to go out for bid. So we would have had to, you know, look at the contract and revise it. And being new in the position, I just didn't have time. So the city decided to renew this for the 2-year term, which is up in March of 2023. So that being said, we will have to put this contract out for bid again in probably January, I would say. So I wanted to start the discussion with the commission as to, well, a couple of things. First of all, Marty pointed out that there were not addendums, but options. Options.
The bidders have the option.
Janet, excuse
Just
me,
a
Janet.
moment.
Could
Yes,
everyone please use their microphones?
yeah,
I
Thank
can't
you.
hear, it's not picking up at all.
okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, when the bid went out, there were 3 contingency items that bidders were permitted to bid on, and the winning bidder did bid on all 3 of those, and that was awarded. So for some reason, that didn't come out in what we got on the attachment to the agenda, but they're important to me because they included mulching the street trees and let's see, what's the other one? Pruning the street trees that are under 15 feet in height. So those are important to me.
okay. So I'll have to dig back through my paperwork and see if I have that attachment, and I can resend copies to all of the commissioners. But what I'd like the commissioners to do is you will see on page 5, they start to talk about specific maintenance requirements for each of the parks specific. So being that this document is 5 years old, I would like each commissioner to review their respective parks, and if there are any changes that you would like to make to those specifications within reason. We can, I'll get this back on an agenda in the fall to have that discussion and get those points in. You can certainly email me your comments, call me, whatever, mark up your draft and email it or fax it to me, however you want to do that. The other discussion that I wanted to have is what I see as being very important. We are a tree city for 21 years. And as Marty says, it gives us bragging rights, but there are tree cities in the immediate area that have 30 years. And with all of the benefits that trees provide to the community and to humans, I think it's important that we continue with our efforts for that designation. So I wanted to talk with the commission about we've been working with, for our large tree projects, certified tree companies that have a certified arborist. And I'm sure you all know, we do a lot of work with Bartlett and Sussex Tree are the 2 main ones that we work with. The land, right, for major pruning work and tree removal. Bartlett has done some treatment for us. They treated this spring for crepe myrtle, bark scale. We also have Arbor Care that treats trees in Stango Park and Canalfront Park. So I guess what I'm getting at is trying to streamline these contracts so that we're working with, and I'm putting this out there for discussion, but that we have a tree company that we work with that perhaps, and that would be consideration for the landscape contract, because right now we have in that the option of pruning trees up to 15 feet.
Well,
And I think if it's a my comment is, if it's a landscape company, they're not necessarily certified arborists, and they're not necessarily, they could not necessarily be doing proper pruning and giving more damage to the trees than benefit. So I want to put it out there for discussion that we have perhaps a contract for a tree company with a certified arborist to do that work.
Okay, I looked through the whole contract today and I'd say the lion's share of it has to do with, I break it down into three areas. There's the mowing, there's the maintenance of the bed, and there's the mulching. They mulch the beds and they mulch some of the trees, not all of them, but a lot of the trees. To me, I have no problem putting that all in the same contract. I think that can work. The same contractor does irrigation, and I find myself wondering, is it worthwhile exploring whether we could have a separate company doing the mowing and the bed maintenance and the mulching, and then a separate company do the irrigation work? I'm guessing that not every company can do both the irrigation work and that other mulching work. And I am very interested in having, splitting out the tree pruning. In this particular contract, it's only for trees under 15 feet, but that's really kind of a specialty thing. And a tree that small, you really want to get it going in the right direction with central leader, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of our street trees, you need special attention because you try to prune them to keep them away from the vehicles and away from the sidewalks. And you really want somebody who knows what they're doing, like Bill, but Bill can't do all of it.
Well, a little bit of time I've been here, with some of this pruning, the small trees and even these shrubs, I'm over on the side of the library there where there's 40 roses, I guess. And even around here where I was doing some cleaning up, the mulching is just, it's built up around these plants that's 3 and 4 inches. It's just, it's killing them really, and the most amazing thing was just the shrubbery, as I think they plant a little sprig of ivy in everything they plant because there's ivy everywhere in these things. These trees 15 feet and under, this is just my observation over the years with these landscape companies, is they throw out their laborers to tackle this, and they're really not qualified. In my business, I spent my own time with different companies going out on their jobs, my time free, pruning and trying to educate them. And they all nod their head. And then the next year they're back to the same thing. I find these businesses are based on a spreadsheet, and they got to make money, and they make their money by getting in and getting out real fast. I think the smaller outfits, you may have a better luck with, and almost like a mom and pop type outfit. They might not be able to handle this, but do we really need somebody to encompass everything? I know from a bookwork standpoint, but I could see having a separate irrigation person handle all the irrigation in the city. It's this year we suffered from not getting it on. We had to beg to get water, and that doesn't help us when we're trying to get things ready for not only American Bloom, but just for the town people. So and I don't think we're going to find somebody that's capable of doing it all. And I think unfortunately probably have to just pick the lesser of two evils in a lot of cases and maybe eliminate some of these. They don't seem to be doing any pruning, so why we have it in their contract? It's I don't know how we'll handle it. I'm willing to handle as much as I can. I enjoy it. As long as I'm healthy, I'm capable, and as long as my truck is running, I'm capable. Now my truck has 408,000 miles on it, but I keep it up pretty good. So my wife says when we go on vacation, your truck goes to the spa, and she's got a point there. So, but I think there's a lot of discussion on this that we have to deal with.
Carolyn?
I've used all 3 companies in my personal at home. You know, I have several trees, as you all know. And you're very true when you say that some of them can only do one thing, but you won't know that until you've experienced some of the things that I've experienced. I mean, I had all the vites that were just about laying down, and I call myself calling an expert. And I had them all staked. He called it stake. And then rolled down with the first wind after I paid $1,000 for that.
Yeah, it's,
I literally had to do it myself. I went and got the poles and got the right type of ribbon and the whole 9 yards. Some of them really don't have the expertise to do any more than exactly one thing. And in terms of getting a specific person for irrigation and a specific person for caring, I strongly suggest you look at that very closely, because that's the way you ought to go. You will never get everything from one of these companies. And I'm a proof of that.
I mean, everybody's an expert in the business, you
They'll
know?
tell you that. I
Yeah,
mean, just
it's-
as recent as the last winter, I mean, I'm working now to figure out what to do, because all of my arthritis are laying down, and that's a huge job for me.
Thank you. Harry?
2 points. Communication. I think it's very hard. It's a whisper down the lane. I say something to you, you say something to our maintenance, our lawn people. And they were the ones that made a recommendation 2 years ago that we've been following religiously, and they were the ones that mowed it all down as if it had never existed on their recommendation. So obviously, they don't have a lot of communication within their company. And that's always been that way. So communication, and also, since Ed and I have taken over George Smith Park, it's a jungle. There's a lot of trees out there, and Marty will attest to this. There's a lot of trees out there that have other trees. They're villages. There are trees growing inside the hollies. There's trees growing inside of the cedars. And we need someone to come in there who has the expertise to say, this can be saved. This should be just all taken down. This is how we go. I mean, we need someone who is knowledgeable, not just somebody that'll say, I'll take care of that for you. And well, and you don't know what you're gonna end up with. So I really think, while we're talking about sub things, we need a Bartlett. We need somebody who's got a talent on the, I mean, I know we have these 2 gentlemen, fine gentlemen, but they do not have time to go around the parks with a clipboard with us and diagnose all our needs. I think we need to recognize that, and Smith Park is huge, almost 20 acres of trees, and none of them have ever been maintained, we've discovered.
Well, and to that point too, now we're looking at Great Marsh Park. There are many invasives in there. And, I think that that's another reason to have an arborist, to look at, part of the conversation at the public workshop was, some people said, yes, get rid of the invasives. Others said, oh no, I don't want any trees taken out. But the invasives are really, they're a problem.
The
So,
best-
I think that would be a separate contract.
well, but no, yeah, but I'm just,
Can we go back? So
but
you said
wait,
none of
wait,
these,
wait.
none of the trees in, you
What?
said none of the trees in GHB Smith Park have been taken care of, but that is not true. I've had a lot of pruning done during my tenure.
No.
And, but they just need there's a lot of trees, and they need every year they need more work.
Yes, agreed. Back to Great Marsh. Rodney stood up and had to educate the entire crowd. He had to tell them about what grows in the sunshine, what grows on the edges, invasives. Everybody saw it as just one big green body. And Rodney actually stood up several times and did an introduction to, and a fine job. I mean, I've tuned in on his University of Delaware speak, but we've got a lot of people that are, like Rodney said, that are all for a passive park,
Right.
but they have no idea what it would take and I'm not criticizing Marty in any fashion about our park. I know she's in there and she's busy, but there's some hodgepodges in there that Marty can't tackle.
Right.
Well, I walked around the park and it's the undergrowth that really is strangling everything. And the thing is, for instance, when I go out and prune on a job, besides having pruners, loppers, I always have a spade and a trowel. I'm always going after those vines that are growing up in there. And there's nothing more frustrating when I come across something that's been cut down for 15 years. You just can't get it out. But 90% of the time I can go in there and get that out. And if I can, I'll dig down as deep as I can and then I cut it. And but I also know the next year when I come back, I'm looking for that same vine, and whatever we do is just a repetitive process that you got to stay with. It's not a one and done deal. You get rid of these vines, you're revisiting it every year, and eventually you'll start to slow the process down.
And Bill, I commend you on your effort, but when the mayor hired me, he said, I don't want you carrying a trowel in your pocket.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to be the eyes. I want you to be the communicator. I want you to be, I'll make this up. He didn't say it, but the CEO of a park.
Sure.
He said, I want you to be in charge of the park, not the labor on your hands and knees. He said, so many years, the park commissioners did all the maintenance themselves. He said, that's not how we want to do it. And I think it's great. I mean, come on over and I'll show you a couple of things you can dig out. You're right.
You don't have to, I can find them, let me tell you.
It
It's
is
not hard.
It is the vines. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it. But if you had seen it 2 years ago before we got Envirotech in there
Mhm.
to use some herbicides, we didn't even know how much the banks were eroding
Yeah.
until we could see the banks, and we couldn't see the banks because everything had just consumed. And we're just starting to get we have a native wild grape that loves, I don't know if you've been on the BB side and the
Mhm.
graveyard side, that loves to climb up in the fine trees we have and choke them up. And it's a constant battle. And we need somebody to do big parks for us. I mean, we have 18 and a half acres. I don't think you can single-handedly do all the parks.
No, I can't. A couple of years ago, I had a similar situation up in northern Wilmington, up by the Pennsylvania line, in old estate Oberod. And it was neglected for a long time. And we had hedgerows where we had used to be split rail fence, and then we had some native trees that come up, some invasive trees, and we've had vines that made these things 40 feet wide. And I was able to go in there and get it, with the equipment and the time and dedication. I got it down pretty cleared out, and now the only thing they have to do is maintain it and be on the lookout. But it is a project, and I don't have too much faith in a lot of these people, and it's a shame that this industry that I'm in. Back in the 70s, you're really proud to be in it. Today, everybody's in it, and they're just trying to earn a living.
Everybody can buy a truck and say.
Yeah.
Well, and also Smith Park has we have that stormwater pond
Mhm.
that nobody wants to take any responsibility for. I mean, everybody likes to watch the water feed in there, but nobody has a clue that the banks are eroding
Yeah.
and they're cut out 4 feet. And you're talking about the undergrowth. Well, the undergrowth is what's holding the banks, because
I
the trees
agree.
are literally falling over and
Mhm.
pulling the banks in them. So it's not a simple thing. That's why
No, it's a
we've got
double-edged
Envirotech
sword.
in there.
If I could just if we get back to this other question, we have
Mhm.
one contractor who's been retained to do all this work. That's where we're operating now,
Well,
except for the major tree work.
Mhm.
except for the major tree work, yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty much
Okay.
it.
Okay. And that contractor is also in charge of irrigation.
He's in charge of
Irrigation, yep.
mowing, irrigation, mulching, maintaining, weeding the beds, although we're doing a lot of that, so I don't know where the timeline
Well,
is.
yeah.
Depends on what park it is.
It depends, right, it depends on the park, and I have had to ask them to go back into specific parks. If you look at the specifications, there's some parks where they're supposed to be hand weeding. There's very clear specifications for George H.P. Smith Park, but they do irrigation, mulching, mowing, light pruning, planting. They do planting, and as Bill had said, with the mulching, they're putting the mulching higher and higher and higher.
Yeah, that's-
But I've
that's
seen
not according to
trees,
spec.
but,
I mean,
right.
They're not, I mean, the
And
spec says you're not supposed to.
And they have planted trees, and I believe improperly, because they've lasted less than, a year or two. So I think the commission has to do due diligence in consideration of this, and how do we correct it? How do we move forward? Do we want to split this into 2 contracts with, a certified arborist, with a company that's a certified arborist, and then mowing, weeding, mulching, and irrigation, or pulling it out into 3? So you have the certified arborist to do all the tree work. You have landscape, which is mowing, mulching, weeding, and then you have an irrigation. So I think that's what's on the table. And then looking at the previous RFP, and looking at that for content overall, but also content for what is to be done in your specific parks. Harry.
I like the idea of splitting it up, but I want somebody like Bill to put down his shovel and be the one who walks around and makes sure that, like you said, that I see what they're piling the mulch. They think more mulch around the trunk is a good idea. And you're right, it's killing them. But I think somebody needs to say to these guys, say to the boss of these guys, you're doing it all wrong, and you need to correct it. I think we need you to help us.
Yeah. In my previous working, I tried to encourage these people. And I said, look, I know you make your money by putting mulch down. I said, some of these projects, the mulch is so thick. I said, you can still make your money by just working this existing mulch up and then lightly top dressing it with fresh mulch, which gives it the appearance, because it all begins to revert back, sooner or later. And, it's a machine that you just can't stop. I don't know what it is, but it's, these companies are so big, and it's hard to get anybody to really listen.
But I think that almost needs to be in the contract, because each of you knows.
It's in the
what you
contract
want.
now. The trouble is we haven't been enforcing it.
Well, but I mean, before they do anything, they have to talk to each of you. Because the reason that you were told no hand work like that was because for 15 years, the 2 people who worked on George H.B. Smith Park.
Your husband.
No, your husband
and
was.
Jack Scholes, they were putting in 35 hours a week. each.
Oh,
And so that's how much work it took to do that. And so, I mean, willingly and happily, but I don't know how many hours these folks are putting in, but it's not a substitute for that hand work. And so that's also when people are like, I can't be chairman, because it's like they could be out doing that, but then they couldn't be.
but your husband worked smart.
Well,
he worked smart on everything he did, and he involved, I mean, Chris was involved with that, the planning.
And Jack Scholes was.
We have
Jack.
trees down there
Yeah.
now that are magnificent because of the effort you did 10, 12 years ago. But
But it's unsustainable. That level of volunteerism is unsustainable. And it seems to me that, once the contract is set, I suspect the people are like, oh yeah, I got it, I'm gonna do it. And you all as a group are like, wait a minute. And I feel like they need to be taking direction from you. It's like, yes, these in general are here, but I want this done here, I want that done there.
well, I'll give you a 100% grounded. I'm walking the dog through the park. Susan and I are walking the dog through our park. And I see this guy, they're cutting, the guy strap on a big canister and he's got a sprayer. So I said, I got to find out what's going on. Because our contract has a real strict what goes into our park in the way of herbicides. I went over to the guy. I said, what you got in the tank?
Oh, no.
No, he told me it was Roundup. And I said, I just held up my hands like, what? And he said, well, I was going to spray it around this and that and this and that. And I was like, it's in our contract. It says it now. And when you try to talk to the man who's in charge about
He's not-
simple things like cutting
he's
down the
not gonna be
daffodils,
there.
he
He's not gonna
said,
be there next
I
week."
can't listen to you
Right.
about cutting. I have to talk to Warren. Warren, right? Because there's no, but there's a story behind the daffodils that Warren was involved in. And he's created, in other words, I can't talk to him about anything. He doesn't want to hear, in other words, it has to go through Janet. So in other words, it says in here that the commissioners talk to the landscaper, but when the landscaper refuses to talk to you, that makes it really, really difficult. And then the guys are clueless on what they're doing. They're at one sock fits all.
Also, with this outfit, okay, they're doing pruning. Well, if there's somebody in that company that strictly did the pruning, then you could communicate with them and you could work with them. But I don't know exactly what goes on here, but I have a feeling that this person may prune one day and this person has got time, so go out and prune this. And these guys really don't know what they're doing. You don't need an education in this business. You just need to put the time in and have the interest in learning, and these people, they may be landscaping this year and they may be painting the house next year and they may, who knows what they're doing the following year. So it's the work pool is pretty slim, I think.
Well, it's also an industry where the turnover can be quite low.
It's-
Oh, it's not- yeah.
it's
Right.
And you're not,
They can't
what
get
you're
you.
talking about is you want consistency of care. And you can write that into the specifications. But then you have to, as Marty says, you have to enforce it. So, if we look under mulching and all areas to be mulched should be weeded and cleaned, all mulch bed areas shall be replenished with double shredded hardwood mulch. All right, that was a decision made by this group, I guess, on what kind of mulch to use. And to maintain a depth of 2 inches. Any remaining mulch from the prior treatments is to be removed or loosened and incorporated into the mix. So that's standard and it's good standard horticultural practice. The question is, are they doing it?
No.
And I think the answer is no.
No.
So, you have to, so maybe when you put this out to bid, you say, well, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be it's a tough job because as a contractor, because we got half a dozen different generals here who want to tell them what to do. That makes it hard. Okay. But you have to explain that and get it out there. And maybe when this contractor comes in, each of us would go and meet with them and say, here's what we want done. And this is what we expect to have done. And I think that's kind of the contract, the scope of work and enforcing it. the question we have to decide is it one contractor or is it multiple contractors? There are, reasons to go different ways. In my experience, I've worked with one big contractor. And yes, there's irrigation. Well, they hire a sub-consultant who does the irrigation and they're responsible for it. So but the person responsible is the general landscape contractor. So you can make the argument that it could be beneficial to have a large firm responsible for all this stuff, so long as they remain responsible and you can monitor them and have a chain of communication to keep it going. We may decide, no, all this irrigation, let's just deal with one irrigation contractor. And if that's the case, then that contractor is going to be obligated to coordinate with the other contractors when they go out and do the work and they rip up the sod and replace this and replace that and change heads. Then you're asking them, relying on them to be responsible to talk to one another.
And to you all, I think the most important key is they talk to the commissioners.
Is what?
Is they talk to the commissioners and listen to them and take it seriously.
Well, I think you're right, because that's the way we are set up. And so, that has to be kind of codified or something so that whoever's bidding for this understands that. And I think we need to, all landscapes aren't the same. Thank
Right.
goodness.
Right.
Canalfront Park is completely different from trying to maintain Great Marsh Park, which is open lands management. And takes a totally different education and skill set to manage that. And we have to recognize that in how we put these contractors out. So maybe the trees, Marty, we would say all the tree work in Lewis goes under one tree company that has a demonstrated proficiency or expertise in, with qualified certified arborists, however we want to say it. And and they get that work, and we draw a line, and then somebody else is responsible for mowing and mulching and so on. And it's also, it's not just the plants. I mean, in this contract is gravel paths and maintaining the paths, raking them, keeping a crown on them, rolling them perhaps. And now I'll shut up. I want to make sure that we get a copy of your bid form.
Okay.
Because the bid form, the way that that's set up, it enables you to foresee a lot of these things. So in here you talk about replenishing the gravel, and then it's an additional cost to send the bill. Okay, so what are they going to charge per cubic yard for a gravel to be installed and rolled and set properly?
Okay.
What are they charging for mulch per cubic yard to be installed? If we need topsoil, what are they going to charge for that? All of those things ought to be on the bid form ahead of time, and that's what they're agreeing to. What do they charge for labor? I'd like to know. Why not? They send a crew in here of 5 people. What's it going to cost?
But see, that's your expertise.
Should be.
But I mean, that's your.
Right, right.
The two of you have an expertise that, I mean, you want to learn how to teach a 7th grader reading, I got it. But as far as this, I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm nodding my head. Now, Ed and I have sat down and we've tried to write down all the things we want the contractor, when they look at our park, to understand and follow. I mean, we're going to take the basic bones and embellish them. But this, you're opening up a big, but it's only going to make it better because your input.
Well, it's only going to get worse because we have more and more people want to use the park for extended periods of time, extended seasons, and all those things. So now's the time to get our arms around it and get our act together so we can get the right contractors in and develop a relationship with them. It's going to take a little while.
It will.
Well, page 4, it says keep Parks and Rec commissioners informed in a timely manner of all work completed, all phone calls and emails from commissioners will be returned within 24 hours. So to me, that's the key part that needs to be
Enforced.
and beefed up. Because it shouldn't be afterwards. You should have a discussion before about timing and expectation. And you know, a big event is coming and it's going to, you know, wear and tear on your area. You need to have it maybe, you know, given a little extra love afterwards. So, you know, you need to have something done. You know, those are all the things that you know that they don't, and have an expectation.
I also just want to mention, going back to the mulching, Allison and I have had several conversations about mulching up against the buildings. And as it's specifically related to the Fisher Martin House, which is the Chamber of Commerce, it's a historical building. They mulch right up to the wood. So as you go through this, I'd like you to consider that in page 4, H1. Consideration of the mulching around the beds, how, or around the buildings, how far away from the building should mulch be? So just as another point to consider when you're going through this. So I don't know that there's a decision to be made tonight. It sounds like there's, you know, still some discussion. Does it get, you know, how we break this up, you know, into how many different contracts. So I think if I don't want this to get lost though, because it is so important. So I think we can table discussion. If you all can go through this with a fine tooth comb, make suggestions, comments, recommendations. Is it fair to say we could bring it back to the August commission?
Well, we can submit.
You can submit, right, right. You can submit, right. You can do that.
You should have that. You should have that in the next 2 or 3 weeks from everyone, really.
Okay. Do you want to put it back on the July agenda?
Well,
At least we can talk about it.
At least the submission.
I think it's gonna take a number of.
I know, I know, it will, it will. I mean, this is, obviously, feel kind of passionate about this, and as you all do
Justly
too.
so,
And
yeah.
I think it's important enough, which is why I wanted to get it on the agenda in June, because it is going to take some time. And
But you've got some experts
I
among us
I do.
who have worked in the business.
At a high level.
At a
Yeah,
high
we're
level.
very fortunate. to have
Yes.
you guys.
And
Yeah.
They should be the gang of three, the gang of two.
Gang of four.
gang of-
Yeah, right.
I mean, but
Yep.
Yeah.
Vice
Could
chair.
we
Yeah.
sit down, could we sit down and
Sure,
go over this together?
without doubt.
Have a conversation?
And because of the varied dynamics of our various parks, would there be the potential that, say, we parse out George H.B. Smith Park to one particular guy who doesn't have to be really great skilled at cutting grass compared to the other beautiful parks we have? You know, we got a rough park. This George H.B. Smith Park is a rough park. It's not a turf park.
So you're
It's
saying a different contractor for
Different
mowing?
contract.
even mowing. It would that potentially, because the hacks that work over in George H.B. Smith Park, they do okay for that. But in the finer parks that we have, I think the more manicured parks, could we look at maybe a higher level of skill? I don't know.
Probably
And
different.
the dollars are going to come into play.
and also, let's get Warren in on this gang.
Oh,
Warren's
you-
definitely in.
Yeah. I think Rodney mentioned
Yeah.
Warren. So
One,
He was
one,
smiling
yeah,
too much.
one thing to consider, though, a lot of these landscapers and firms are up to their ears in work.
Yes.
It may be difficult or have to pay top dollar to get the best or some, if you want them.
right, right.
Everybody's had the same conversation.
Beautiful parks that we have.
I think you get what you pay for.
Beautiful parks.
You really-
Our park aside. We're an active park. It's a beautiful park, but in a different way.
Right.
Yeah,
But I think the level of skill needed in some of our finer parks is different than what we need. Maybe we can. look at that.
We could easily be separated into a guy and a girl.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is a little bit of a, I'm going to call it a work group where the people with the subject matter expertise will talk about some of the finer points of it and report back. Each commissioner will do their review of the previous proposal, RFP, with paying special attention to their particular park or parks. And then just the final question, we'll bring this back in July versus August.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Keep
It
it
would
moving.
help if each commissioner could send us comments on, as to their park, if you give them to Janet, as to the pieces as to their park, whether any changes need to be made or improvements, whatever.
And I will send out the copy with the options, the copy of the proposal, the RFP with the options. I just have to find it.
Do we need a motion for this little group, this work group?
I don't think so. It's because we're tabling further discussion so that the work group can just bat some ideas around and the commissioners can work on their individual parts.
There's only 4, it's not a quorum.
Right, I did, yeah, I did the math. Quietly. I'm like, wait a minute, how many people do we have on this? So, yeah, well done, thank you. Okay, well, this was, I think, a very productive meeting. I really appreciate everybody's comments and input. Is there anything else? Or do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, that, all in favor? Thank you. Next meeting will be July 18th.